Okay, just so everybody knows, I've now started the recording on the lawn maintenance workshop on December the 2nd. And if you don't want your picture up, just put it onto mute. You might need to switch it onto speaker view if you want to see the person talking as the prime picture. Or if you keep it on gallery view, that should be on the right-hand corner of your screen, you will see everybody. So that's your choice, what you'd like to do about that. What we're going to do is run through, the presenters will talk about the issues that they've dealt with on their lawns, so give you some examples and deal with some of the questions that people have asked us. But as we run through, you notice that there's a chat button. It's a little box with a speech bubble. It's on the bottom of my screen. I don't know where it is on everybody's screen. If you click on that, you can ask a question. So as we go through, if you do have a question, we'd like you to put it on the chat button, and I'll go through once we've finished the session, or probably Peter will go through, or we'll refer to the questions in order that they come in, and just clarify that they've been answered, and then we'll move down through the list of questions. So that's probably the best way for you to be able to note an issue that you'd like answered as we're running through the presentation. And we'll have about 20 minutes at the end for question and answers. So it's going to be over to you, Peter Freer, if you would like to start the session. Thank you. We can't hear you yet, Pete.
I've got to unmute my phone, I can't control it.
You can talk now.
Video. Good one.
Okay, I'm trying to find Peter's phone to unmute it.
I think I've just done it myself.
Thank you, good.
This is learning how to handle a phone when your microphone's not working.
There you go, they're wrong. Is Malcolm there?
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. The format is that we've got 4 10-minute presentations. People to live in.
Peter, we can't hear you properly.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, we've got 4 10-minute presentations. I've asked the presenters to limit it to 10 minutes each. That's only going to scratch the surface, but it means that we can get into each topic, and there's a question and answer session afterwards to finish it. Kate, could you put up the issues in maintaining a lawn?
You want me to share screen? Is that what you'd like?
Yep, that page 2 and then page 3. Pushing ahead.
So you want to the next page. So do you want to run through those, Peter?
Yep. There's a range of issues ranging from, do you hire professionals, do it yourself, relying on your volunteers, annual renovation, when, how, and how much is it going to cost? What about compaction and drainage? Is that the criteria for when you do serious renovation? Watering, how often and how? Fertiliser, what, when and how? Weeds, identifying what the problems are and anticipating what you have to do to stop them getting going. Who does the spraying? Ants, beetles, grubs, what do you use on them and when? And again, who's got the qualifications to do the spraying? Mowing, how often, how low, and what's the target lawn speed that you're after? Is rolling any use, or is it a waste of time? What's the best ball barrier, and what's the impact that that has on the grass? Ditto for line marking. Do you use paint, string, diesel, copper, or plastic strips? Which equipment's best to line mark? And if you're using paint, which paint? Because that all has impacts on the grass. There's issues like, when do you move the hoops? Because you've got rabbit runs, loose hoop holes. Do you swing them or do you move them? And do you have a set pattern to move in? Vandalism. Do you have any concerns or solutions? The finance and budget. And when do you update or replace existing equipment? The type of equipment. Do you use domestic stuff or do you use commercial machines? There's battery technology, or do you stick to good old petrol mowers? There's equipment maintenance and the yearly servicing. There's sharing of equipment, both with other croquet clubs or just other users. How do you get more out of your club volunteers? And a whole host of other questions. So we've got 4 presenters who are going to tackle these issues. So in no particular order, but in the order that they'll be speaking, we've got Rob Elliott, who's the guru at Cooks River, who's currently involved in converting 3 lawns into 4 and working very hard at it. His focus is going to be preparing national level lawns. The second speaker is Ben Vang from Dubbo Croquet Club. They've just recently installed artificial turf courts, and I thought it would be interesting to hear how they're finding those. The third speaker is Ralph Richardson from Canberra Croquet Club, and the particular issues there, amidst everything else, is about dealing with contract greenkeepers, especially when things start going a bit wrong. The final speakers is a joint effort with Kevin Davies and Chris Williamson from Toronto Croquet Club, and their focus is on sharing lawns with other sports. So, without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Rob Elliott.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks for this. Should be very interesting. Look, as you know, Peter introduced us as someone who's been involved at Tempe now for 5 years, really, and we obviously maintain the sort of the state competitions there. So one of the questions that came up was, what makes a good championship type lawn? And you might talk about GC or AC and ricochet, but really I'm a big believer, and the top players look first and foremost into speed of the lawn. We like the lawns to be no slower than 10 seconds, and we go between 10 and maybe 12 seconds in the winter months at Tempe. So 10 seconds is how long it takes a ball to be hit from the south boundary to come to rest on the north boundary. And one of the reasons why we like the lawns that quick is that because it really takes away from the issues of strength that some women or men players will have. So it makes the lawn no disadvantage. And also in AC, the top players and club players like the boundaries to be consistent. GC players probably like the centre of the lawn to be as flat as possible. But all good players should be able to play the lawn with some time. So, you know, we don't have to get too concerned about small roll-offs in different areas. But speed is very important. So people who are cutting their lawns at 7 and 8 mil That's just generally way too slow for top play. Now, so what we're doing at Cooks River, we have a combination of professional people. We have a greenkeeper, and we have a senior pest and herbicide person that has been at the club for over 20 years. And then we have volunteers that really do the bulk of the legwork, the boots on the ground stuff at the club. And this is the point that I'm most keen to talk about with you, is how to get the best out of your volunteers. Now, as a volunteer myself, one of my pet hates is having equipment that is not suited to the job or not up to spec. Nothing worse than having an old lawnmower that doesn't start, doesn't cut well, it's got a very small cut pattern. This is really hard work, and it's very frustrating, and you won't get members to do work for you. One of the things we've introduced at Tempe over the last 3 years is a ride-on Toro Triflex lawnmower. So basically that cuts 1.5 metres. It's a cylinder mower, and we cut at 3 mil at the moment. But what's so good about this type of equipment is that it's very easy to use and very quick. So we don't have any problems getting members to cut the lawns, because we're cutting our lawns 2 to 3 times a week in the growing season. Because we've got competitions, and it's actually just a lot easier to maintain the lawns at a high level than sort of try and stop and start. So one of the bits that we've done is we've really got our equipment up to specification. Now, so that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about, was to make sure that people and clubs have a good understanding of what their a lot of clubs have nothing short of rubbish gear. You know, it's old and tired. And yes, the club bought it 20 years ago, and that's great, but it's not very friendly to use, and it doesn't work very well. And bad cutting equipment on lawns can bring in disease and other issues. So in terms of lawn maintenance, good equipment is a very strong way to improve your lawns by simply cutting them more regularly, as well as fertilising and watering and all the other issues. Another big issue that we have at Tempe, which I think most clubs would have, is that if you don't dethatch your lawns regularly, you get a lot of dead grass building up. The lawns become very spongy, so there's no net, you can't get a roll out of them, because the rolling really only lasts maybe a few hours, a day at most. So having your lawns dethatched and top dressed every year, it does seem extreme, but you'll find your lawns will greatly improve. And so this pile there that we went back one, this is work we've completed today, and we must have got 25 cubic metres of dead grass out of the 3 lawns. We cut them 4 ways. Yeah, this pile of grass here. So that's just out of 3 lawns today. But we're going to find the lawns will come back healthier, harder and faster, and hopefully we'll actually save money by not having to use quite so much chemical over the next year. One of the issues we had at Tempe was we had very poor boundary fences or boundary kickboards. So what we've gone with is basically a treated pine, 3 metre long by 150 high timber pine board, and that's working really well, and it's greatly improved the safety down there at Tempe. So yeah, this is where this is the photo showing the spreader. This is a scarifying unit on the back of a tractor. Very effective, very clean. And the contractor there, you know, this is what they do all the time. And it's well worth taking their opinion on how much you should remove. So it comes back to dirt, but in the end, it'll be a much better result next year. We hope the lawns will be back in play next month. But that's my main point I want to talk to you about, and is trying to get your members to do a lot of the legwork at the club, which will greatly improve your lawns and it builds a good club feeling as well. Nothing worse than having to constantly pay out for contractors. This machine here is picking up all the thatch and blows out the sort of loose soil. Wouldn't recommend this piece of equipment if you've got a lot of houses nearby. Can get a bit dusty. So this process happened over the last couple of days. Here is a top dresser. So this is a Toro top dresser. This can put out 100 tonne in a day, and there's none of this old shoveling business. Today we put about 30 tonne over the 3 lawns. And that's obviously an 80-20 sand and soil mix. And we fertilised and we're watering in as well today. One of the things I did when I was a member at Chatswood, we didn't look after the lawns. The council did the lawns and they didn't do a terribly good job. But one of the jobs we had at the club was to look after the gardens, which were really beautiful. So I introduced some battery hedging and blowers. Very effective, very good quality if you buy commercial stuff. And the great thing about battery technology is there's no servicing and it works every time. So I'd really look into the battery stuff. It's very good, but you have to commit to spending the right amount of money. Obviously, and we're big on servicing our equipment here at Tempe. We service every piece of equipment at least once a year. So it's like replacing the cords on the motors, making sure they start, sharpening the blades on the chainsaw. When this is our Toro mower with the heads off, they're in getting service. So we spend about $1,000 to have new plates, and grinding of the heads, and we just use it to tow our bar behind, a 3-metre bar, which is on loan from the good people at Coogee. So, you know, even at Tempe, we certainly don't have all the equipment, and we like to use the bits and pieces from other clubs and share as we would share anything we've got if needed. So sharing equipment's a good idea. It saves storing it all. So servicing the equipment's very important. Again, it comes down to making sure the gear works when you want to use it. Nothing more frustrating than having something that doesn't work. So clubs really need to look at expenditure and making sure they've got a bit of their budget every year put aside to replace and to properly look after their equipment that they use, which is the most important part of the club is the lawns. This is just showing some repairs we had to do. We did a peel of some of the lawn area on lawn 3, if anyone knows Tempe, and transplanted that across, all volunteer work. You know, big group of people. We got it done in 2 days. Tempe is very blessed because we're on bowling lawn, so all the money is in the drainage underneath, and that's the most important part of any lawn area is drainage. We don't see it, but it's incredibly important. What else can I talk about? Yeah, this is the area probably a month after we peeled off about 40 mil of the ground. So I think that's all I really got to say. I'm sure there's lots of questions, but again, lawn speed is the most critical part of what we do at Tempe. We like players to come down and be able to enjoy the speed of the lawns and how easy it is to hit the ball across the lawn. They get full value for their shots, which is nice because it really stops any, you don't have to be a big hitter. That's the main thing at Tempe. So I'm done. I'll mute now and I'll let you hand over.
A few questions came in.
Back to you, Peter.
Okay, Peter, back to you.
My phone's not working. So thank you, Rob. One quick question was the 30 tonnes for all 4 lawns, or was it just for the first 3?
We put 30 tonne over the 4 areas, or the 4,000 square metres of lawn. What we're going to do, probably put another 15 tonne on in about a month's time, just so we keep the, I mean, like anything, it's better to do small amounts more often than one big hit.
Yeah.
But this planning for this, I must say this planning has taken 2 years of planning to get this to work. So we just didn't think about it last week. Been a lot of planning, and we're working right to the right timeline now.
Good-o, thank you. Okay, the second speaker is Ben Vang from Dubbo Croquet Club. Ben?
Hello everybody, this is new to me and I don't know how much I can contribute to a discussion on lawn maintenance because we haven't really had to do any of that for a couple of years now. But it might be of interest to everybody to learn what actually happened here in Dubbo. In 2018, the bowling club was in where we shared, where we had been for 98 years. They were in dire financial state and bad management, and seeing we were part of the property that the bowling club owned, it was getting difficult for us. Now the bowling club ended up being taken over by the ISL club, and that they were not interested in croquet, so we were asked to leave. And that was after 98 years on the same spot. That was a little bit of a problem because there was nowhere else suitable that we could find. It would mean that we would have to probably establish new places ourselves, establish new lawns, new clubhouse and all that. And we went looking everywhere, discussed all the possibilities, but the cost was just astronomical to start something fresh. As it happened, the local tennis club that had clubhouse and 4 full-size tennis courts was about to fold. And that we got word of that. We contacted them and got together with them. They were down to 8 members and rapidly losing more members. So we got together, we had a long talk with them, and the short or the long was that we took over the club, running of the club, and established ourselves as a croquet club there as well as tennis. That meant that the club could continue and they could continue playing tennis. This seemed to be the best idea for us all. And it would mean that although we would have to play on tennis courts, artificial surface tennis courts, at least we could move and start playing very shortly after being kicked out of the old place. So we were forced to move, and it turned out for the better. So we moved to the tennis club premises, a beautiful big building, and 2 courts. They had new artificial surface put in, I think it was 4 years previously, so it was fairly new. It was easy enough to convert this to playing on, because the tennis people only wanted to play once a week. We soon established that we could play whatever day we wanted. And one of our members, a very capable fella, manufactured new hoops that could be put into the artificial surface. So we got 2 courts, although smaller courts, set up to play croquet, and we all got playing again. Now, as I said before, there were 4 full-size tennis courts, but only 2 of them were covered. Down the back of the club was plenty of land that had the old clay courts, but was not being used, hadn't been used for years. So it had overgrown vegetation, and it was in a bad state. We had our eyes on that, and we decided that we were going to see if we could establish 2 full-size croquet courts on that part of the land. The tennis courts are unused, or rather leave them as second or third courts and for tennis. So that's the 18 months or so, no, that's now 2 years ago. We decided to spend some of our own money to clean up the old courts, the old clay courts, and to level them, remove all the overgrown vegetation, and prepare, as it were, to establish artificial courts. Now, the reason we decided on going artificial surface or synthetic surface was that we have had really bad drought here in Dubbo and huge bills for water and water restrictions. So, and then we've also had now some months of playing on the tennis courts, and we decided that that was not bad at all. So we decided that it would be a good idea to look at synthetic courts, what the cost would be, and maintenance, and et cetera, et cetera. So we did a lot of work there, and of course found out that the costs of that sort of job were quite high. We started applying for grants everywhere we could find a spot to apply. The tennis courts is part of a park called Mullis Park, and it's owned by the Lands Department. So there were fewer restrictions on what we could do. And we got together with, and a lot of help from the Lands Department, and discovered that it would be fairly easy for us to establish some new courts there if we could get the money. We applied for, I can't remember what the name of the one that we finally got it from, but it was part of Better Communities, New South Wales Better Communities.
So
and,
Ben, we're running out of time.
Okay.
Can I ask you a couple of specific questions? How much did it cost per lawn?
All right. The cost of establishing the 2 lawns, the 2 synthetic lawns, was $114,000 for just the surface and the supply and putting it down. Now, there were several expenses before: removal of the trees and preparing the ground, surface work, earthworks, and other things there. That was about 20,000. And then we also put up lights, shade, new shade shelters, and of course spent money to have new hoops and balls made suitable for the surface. So in all, we have spent $203,000.
And what sort of speed are you getting on the lawns?
It is very fast, and it's probably faster than we thought we were getting. We did a lot of tests on all different types of synthetic surface, and we did tests with a nail ramp, so we could see, we could easily compare it. The speed was at the top end of where it is fast. It was nearly before it was too fast. So I'll just refer to my notes here. We have 5.9 mil. Sorry, 5.3 mil. So I have just measured it this morning, actually, after we had been there for 5 months and had it, we just had the contractors back to finish off everything. And it was 6.1 nil, and I think that it was 17.1 plumber, which is extremely fast.
That's very fast.
It is, it's very fast, and it has been taking a bit of getting used to. We're at the moment discussing of what we can do to slow it down.
So would you do it again at this stage?
As the result of it, yes, I think we would do it again. There's no doubt about that. And we're looking at, because the tennis people are now down to 3 or 4 members, and we are looking at taking over the rest of it and putting courts there as well. And there's no doubt we'll go for that again, because the upkeep cost is just so much less than with other lawns.
Okay, and you haven't had any experience yet about wear and tear around the hoops or anything like that?
No, this was what was the interesting part about playing on the tennis courts. We had the hoops in the same spots for 18 months with practically no rabbit runs or anything down there. It wasn't necessary to move them. And we were quite impressed by that. So we decided that that should work just as well when we put down our own court. We have plates underneath where the hoops are to prevent rabbit runs. And if anybody's interested in how this was all arranged, if you go to our website, you can go to the part about artificial lawn installation and download our there's a 28-page booklet with pictures and all the details of installing the artificial surface.
Okay, Ben. Okay, we've run out of time, but I think there's a couple of question and answer things slated for you later on.
Sure.
So the next speaker is Ralph Richardson from Canberra Croquet Club.
Good evening, all. I'm just going to more or less fire into the lists that Peter had sent out in relation to this. Initially, or the basis of what we do is that we actually have a professional lawn keeper, and we've got this rather unique situation in Canberra where the ACT government actually own and maintain the lawn surface itself. So they actually pay for the lawn mowing. The annual contract to the to our contractor is 23,000, and that includes round figures about 8,000 that comes from the government for the lawn mowing. So it leaves him with about 15 or 16,000 to do all the other maintenance during the course of the year. The annual renovation, which we do it's going to start on the 18th of December actually. We allow about 3 weeks for it, and during the course of that, what will end up happening is they will do a solid tine aeration, the scarifying, top dressing and levelling, and an application of granular fertiliser and a wetting agent. That all just gets done at the same time. So the lawns are out of use for about 3 weeks. We're hoping to have them back for play again by the 8th of January. The overall cost of that, we don't, because we just have an overall figure that we pay this guy. My only experience with this was about 3 years ago, and it was probably in the vicinity of about $3,000 for this annual renovation. We did look at doing laser levelling at the time, but our lawns are really very good at this stage, both in, there's, even though for those people who are down here for the New South Wales Division 2 Championship, there was water everywhere, of course, because we don't have the wonderful benefit of the Tempe lawns where they're on a sand base and drain very quickly. But ours is a little bit more normal than that. In saying that, the lawns are fairly flat. The way we do any relatively minor leveling, excluding obviously the top dressing, is if we can get a bit of water into it, we use our polishing roller and just work a particular area that we might have an issue with. That worked not bad last year. It was quite wet around about the time when we were doing this, and then we did have a major hailstorm come through that basically meant we had to do another major renovation. Watering on it, look, this year's been rather phenomenal, as you are all aware. On average, it gets cycled through about twice a week. They're all on this pop-up sprinkler systems that actually, and they just rotate through. I think there's something like 10 sprinkler heads over the 3 lawns that we've got. So that's about 2,000 square metres of lawn area. The fertiliser, well, maybe I should bring in here, we part of the contract is to actually have the soil analysis done twice a year. And for Canberra, because we have a down period in terms of where there's no growth at all, the analysing actually has to be done around about the end of August, because that's when everything is just dormant and we don't have to worry about that. In saying that, however, we actually do keep mowing even up to the end of June, even though the growth has stopped. It actually still helps to stimulate the grass. There is about a two-month period where we don't actually do any mowing, and as a general thing, we're mowing at about 4.5 millimetres. That keeps our lawns fairly fast and not much slower than Tempe. But again, we all have different, or most of us have different grasses, and it's very hard to actually do a comparison. You know, I know Orange has got the similar sort of temperature as we have, but they've got a different grass coverage. So there would be variations on that as well. The fertiliser that was suggested this time, when they did the analysis, we just found that the lawns are in very good condition, a little bit low on sulphur, and it was suggested that for spring, we used a fertiliser of Best Greens King, which was 250 kilograms per hectare was the rate for it. But we also actually have a monthly requirement for them to put on 30 litres, well, a Liquimax N40, which is the one that the soil analysis guys recommended, and that is done on a monthly basis. The other thing that we actually do is in early April, as we're leading into the dormancy period, we actually apply a granulated gypsum, which raises the base level calcium, and also an application of a high, what do we got there? Potassium, a high, I don't know what I did, can't read my writing, fertilizer that also actually helps during dormancy for the lawns. we do get a lot of weeds here on a regular basis. May, June, we've got the winter grass or Poa annua that needs to be treated. The spraying, any herbicides and that actually have to be sprayed by qualified people. Not sure what our contractor's going to do, because the only qualified person he had working for him left a couple of months ago. So that will be very interesting. We also get a fairly heavy infestation of the black beetles and black ants, and they need to be treated normally in January. They do that just a few days after, prior to when we get the lawns back to play on. So they'll treat that, and but inevitably the black ants in particular need to be treated another couple of times during the course of the year. We do mow twice weekly for about 10 months of the year. And as I said, we mow it at about 4.5 millimeters. Rolling, we do roll just once a week, and that's a volunteer roster that we do that on. I personally think that it makes a little bit of difference to it, but from what Rob was saying earlier, and it's quite correct, you know, some days you're not really getting very much out of the benefit of the rolling, other than I find that when rolling that you can actually flatten out your rabbit runs a bit. We have to change the swing the hoops about about 3 times in a year, just to avoid that. The ball barriers, we actually use the 100 mil ag pipe. It seems to work okay. In fact, it's relatively easy. Our area is quite restricted. For any of those, any of you that have actually been to Canberra, we technically can't have full-size lawns there. There's just not enough space. So the area between the lawns is actually only about 200 mil, and that's 100 of that is the ball barriers between them. Other than that, you know, it's not bad, but the lawns are very, very fast and very flat. Do you want me to, Peter, do you want me to go on with the line marking and things that we use, or?
No, I think we're running out of time, so we might save that for question and answer. The only question maybe you could answer straight away is someone's asked, what mixture soil do you use for the top dressing?
Oh, we just actually use a straight sand base, a very fine sand is all they use. And that's all they've been using in the 4 years or 3 years that I've been in lawns manager here.
And would that be more about trying to maintain the drainage?
Yeah, it is. I think it's also a little bit, because of the basis of we've got a lovely soil in there already, and it beds down really quite nicely with the sand, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
The final presentation is from Toronto Croquet Club, where Kevin Davies and Chris Williamson are going to do a double act, and their focus is going to be on what it's like to be sharing your lawns with somebody else.
Well, can I start?
Yes.
Right. You blokes don't know what you've got. You're blessed with your setups, because we have a public oval. Buried in the way there. We've got a public oval, and because of that, we get golfers, and the best place to hit a golf ball from is from a croquet court. And being a good golfer, you've got to leave a fair-sized hole in the court when you hit that ball. That's quite annoying. The other thing is, because it's public, people like to exercise their dogs there. The sign says, you know, dogs must be on leashes, but that doesn't stop them. They're off the leash, throwing balls, and where's the best place to throw a ball is onto a nice flat croquet court. And with large dogs stopping in a hurry, you get a nice nice little trench across the lawns. Well, that's only it's only a few of our problems. The next is rain. When it rains, what do kids like to do? Get on their push bike and ride through the puddles and the thing. So this, and do nice slides across it. So if people don't know you're living it. The cricket, well, we put up, or we don't put up, we have a pretty good relationship with the cricket club. But what happens is, come match day, the opposition or the visiting team like to practice before they go out. So they put on their spikes and they go and get onto a croquet lawn and throw balls around the place and dive around to catch them and that. So that, I suppose, is one form of stirring up our lawns and getting the aeration in them, but it doesn't feel good when you come to play next day. Weed. Because it's a council oval, we can't spray for weeds. We've got to have the council spray for the weeds. And that is usually about twice a year if we're lucky. So a lot of our weeds are dug out by manual labour. And when we top dress, we use 9 metres of top dressing for 2 courts. And we do those for 2 courts once a year. We have, at the moment, we've got 4 courts and what we call a half court, which we just about use the half court now for gate ball. And we have a 5th court, our overflow court, which is, it's made up of all the grasses that are in the oval. So it's quite a mixture, quite challenging to play on. Yeah, so we're not spending much money on it because hopefully we may be getting a new standalone croquet court. The council have offered us a site. They've got to do some more checks on it to see if it's not in, have any, it's in the, where the sulphide fertiliser works, it's not, it's in the boom that used to go over the top of those things, so they've got to check that for any contamination there. But so far it's looking pretty good. It's a nice site. We have an irrigated court. It's years ago the Croquet Club chased around local business. They got enough money to irrigate all the courts, or 4 courts, 4.5 courts, and there's 6 sprays per court. They we can set them up to spray of a night. We've got to be careful in the summertime when we spray, because we can't spray the day before the cricket practice or the day before a match. So we're hampered in the summertime when we can water. What else can I tell you?
I guess one of the advantages is you can keep expanding if you're prepared to put up with interesting grass.
No, we can't, because we are around the outer.
Yeah, you're stuck in a certain area.
The perimeter of the oval, and we've got as much as we can get in now. We've got.
Yeah, we can't put any more courts in, Peter. Our overflow court is pretty good compared to a lot of places. It's not up to scratch with the other 4, but what Kevin was saying, sharing accommodation is difficult, but it can be done. Yeah, depending on what sort of grass we started off with, I'm not sure, but it seems to come up all right. You do get the occasional gouging with the cricketers with their spikes, and they do set up their base plate practice wickets on the courts, so they can practice bowling at guys, you know.
Yeah.
It can be done. It is difficult. Our drainage is pretty good. We had 24 mils last night of rain, and we played on all the courts today.
Yep.
So the water's getting away. We've got about a 4 mil fall from the cricket pitch to the creek. And that doesn't really affect the courts that much. Rolling, I'd like to see rolling done at our courts a couple of times a week. It does take out the little bumps and rolls that you do get in the course, but you do have a couple of severe ones that are gradually getting less and less every time we top dress. We do laser level, the top dressing. So he sort of scalps it to at the highest point, and the sandy loam that gets put down brings it up to level or close to it.
How heavy a roller are you using?
I don't know, Kevin, you answered that?
I didn't get that. What was it?
How heavy a roller have we got?
It weighs 680 kg.
Yeah,
A roller.
decent.
It's a bowling green roller, the one where the seat goes sideways.
Yep.
Our lawnmower is an old, what is it, Kevin?
Yes, it is a John Deere.
An old John Deere. It's probably, I don't know, 15, 20 years old, pretty old stuff. But we're sort of trying to keep the money we've got. Kevin's just explained that we are moving. Hopefully we get the go ahead in January, February next year. If they maintain it, it'll take 2 years to fully set up 6 lawns side by side. Instead of the one row, 6 in a row, we're going to have three doubled up, clubhouse and 2 car parks.
Good.
With lighting.
Yeah. Okay, well, the message I'm getting, and someone else has also observed that Camden Park's got similar problems about sharing with a private cricket oval. Yeah. So the message is sharing isn't your first option if you can get a place on your own.
If you can get a place on your own, you're better off on your own, but you can share amicably, provided you have equal say.
Yeah, the cricket club's been quite good with us. We've got quite a good relationship. It's just that the fact is that they wear spikes when they play cricket, and the visiting club likes to warm up, or usually on court 1, throw the ball around and catch it. We've got quite a good relationship with the cricketers.
Yep. Okay, so going back into the question and answer, and it's first in, best dressed in terms of who wants to answer them. One of the questions is, how often should you be laser levelling?
Well, we get our 2 courts top dressed and laser levelled each year. But the thing is, because it's an oval, it's got to have a drop off to the sides. So you cannot put enough soil on the lower edges of the courts to get them level. They do have a run to the outside the court.
Yeah. Rob, do you laser level?
No, we don't. Look, I don't think it's worth the money unless you're doing something. Look, I personally feel lawns need a little bit of character anyway. As I say, good players don't have a problem with small imperfections. And you're better off sinking the money into doing scarifying your lawns every year. That would be my tip. You know, all we do is use a 3-metre bar at Tempe, and you know they're not perfect. They're not supposed to be perfect, to be quite honest, because top players, you know, don't want to play on perfect lawns because they get hit from everywhere. So croquet lawns are, I feel they're supposed to have some character to them, as long as they're not in difficult spots, like in corners or on boundaries.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't bother wasting the money.
Can I come in there? The laser levelling the contractor does. As I said, it's because it's an oval surface, he can't get it spot on for it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they're always wanting the water to go away from the wicket, Kevin. So yeah, I mean, you might have 40 mil 4, 50 mil 4. Even that, you wouldn't even hardly notice that on a croquet lawn.
Yep. Now, Rob, while you're there's been a bit of side chat about the stress that you can put a lawn under by going down to 3 mil or less for a particular tournament and then letting it regrow a bit to rest up in between.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't flip and flop. We've been cutting the lawns at Tempe at 3 mil for 18 months. And we've had some issues with disease, but that's only because we've deferred scarifying the lawns for 3 years. That's been our biggest problem. And the reason why we've done that is we've been putting the money into other areas of the site. But yep.
Well, the other side of stress is, of course, how often do you water? Do you water a couple of times a week?
Well, again, we've got a unique situation down there at Tempe. We don't pay the water bill. The good people at Concordia do. So I try and use the water very respectfully. I obviously have a water gauge. Being at Tempe, we do catch pretty much whatever coastal rain is in Sydney. I really try and do it on a need basis.
That's right.
If it was a rule of thumb, I'd love to do it twice a week in summer and maybe once a week in winter, or once every 2 weeks in winter, but really depends on the rain.
Ralph?
I find that the hoop holes give you a good idea. When you pull a hoop up, if you can inspect the hoop, the length of the hoop that goes in the ground, you can generally gauge if you want watering in or not.
Oh, well, the hoops, Kevin, they're a big aeration point. So, look, I wouldn't call that a guide, no, because one of the things you find with rolling is that you get a lot of compaction. So you have to be very careful about how much you roll. And if you're going to roll, that's fine. But on a bowling lawn, for example, rolling would mean they scarify and aerate solid and hollows 3 times a year. Now, no croquet club's doing that. We do twice a year. But that's how you get water into the roots of the plant. So compaction is a big issue.
Yeah. Ralph, any comments?
I know. Our watering, Canberra actually normally gets about 30 mil of rain every year, every month of the year. Been a bit different more recently, but that's about what we get. And as a result of that, I find that the lawn watering, we don't water at all during July, August. They never put any water on it. We get a bit of rain, obviously, but they actually don't do any watering in that time. Other than that, as I said earlier, it's about 2 to 3 times a week. It just depends on how hot the weather really is, but certainly no more than that. And it is town water that we're hooked into, so it's not cheap, but that's what we would be doing on this.
Can I just jump in here, Peter, while Mills sent me a question, who does our laser levelling and whatnot. We use raw quartz from Madawi. Well, thank you.
Okay, the next question is, could someone explain the difference between scarifying and dethatching?
They're the same. All you're trying to do as the grass grows, there's layers of dead grass. So if you were to get a shovel and take a sod, say 100 mil, 200 mil deep out of the grass, you can then look at the profile of the thatch. And really there shouldn't be more than, anything more than 20 mil, and you're getting into trouble.
Is that aerating, Rob?
Well, aerating's different. You can. What happens when it rains? The water doesn't actually get through to the roots of the plant. It stops in the thatch, and that's where you get disease from. And you'll find you think, oh well, it's rained, but the water hasn't got through. So, aerating and coring, same thing, is about getting water into the hoops. So quite often you'll notice around a hoop, it's green when there's no, and you go, oh, that's unusual, but that's just because the water's able to get into the root of the plant, where the carrots from the croquet is.
If I could just pop in there, we actually, when we do solid tine, we are using 100 mil depth on the tines, and that's what's going to be happening, in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, the 100 mil tines are they're probably 8 mil or 10 mil. I mean, you can do those and be playing on the lawn in the afternoon, and you wouldn't even notice that they're done.
Yeah.
So scarifying the lawn and removing a lot of thatch is really critical for healthy grass. Now, in saying all of this, everyone's probably got different types of grass, different conditions, different soil types, and that's why I really believe I'm not a greenkeeper, so I take the advice of the team of people that I have around me, and we formulate decisions and we start strategizing the next year's planning. So that's how we do it, but you know, there's no substitute for somebody who really knows what they're talking about. If the club members can come along and help them achieve what you want is the trick.
So is there any reference points that you've found for croquet greenkeeping anywhere?
Oh, look, there's a couple of points, and one of them is in the health and safety policy, and they talk about marking out lawns. You know, some clubs even like to go with string. I think everyone accepts that's not necessarily a good idea. Same with diesel. I know clubs use diesel. I mean, it's that's not really a great idea either, because it kills the grass outside of the line. And you know, just putting diesel on the ground is probably not a good look either. And then there's clubs that do these, I haven't seen them, but they do plastic inlays, and I believe they work quite well. But again, it's all about reducing trip hazards. And so at Tempe, we keep it really simple. We're using a company called Uber Line, which I found to be 20% cheaper than the previous supplier.
We use that as well.
Yeah, it's very good, Uber Line, and good product, goes well. For example, we would use maybe 160 litres over the year on 3 lawns. Keeping in mind, we need to define the lines probably more than a lot of clubs do, because obviously the level of competition and the expectations that you're playing on headquarters lawns. So
yeah,
$1,000 a year is what we would spend on line making.
We mark our lines every 2 or 3 weeks.
There's a question about underground watering systems.
Well, that one I don't know anything about. We've just upgraded our irrigation system at Tempe, or half of it, 2/3 of it, I should say, and we've gone with a valve-in head system, which just means you don't have all these extra boxes for the solenoids. So the solenoid is inside the sprinkler head, and they're performing very well. So, but in terms of any kind of drip system or pre-soak system, I have no experience in that one.
Kevin should be able to tell us a little bit about that. He's fairly conversant with ours. We've got a fair few.
Well, we're using a pop-up spray system that retracts into the ground. We're on a timer. We can time them. We run them in the summertime, probably for early morning or late at night, depending on whether it's a cricket day the next day. And I just judge it, as I said, by the hoop holes, and have a look at the general layout of the grass. You can generally get a pretty good idea of what your grass is under stress or how it's travelling. That's the way I water.
Yeah, fair enough.
Next question was about a problem with weeds. How do you balance use of the chemicals and the health and longevity of the lawn? So is there a trade-off with too much?
Well, you know, weeds are one of those, you know, some people might disagree with me here, but weeds are things that just find space to grow into. So if your cooch is in really good condition, you won't have too many weed problems. So I know that's easy to say, and that's quite often why you get weeds around hoop holes. The hoop hole gets damaged, the weed wants to grow in that vacant space. So Yeah, I think obviously using less chemicals, and obviously, as Ralph has said, you must use an approved contractor. You know, it's not to be used unless you're really understanding the full health and safety risks with the product. So yeah.
Is there any issues with using the same chemical and building some sort of immunity, or is that not a serious issue?
Well, I suspect there is a bit of finesse that gets done with that, and that again, that's why you want to use people who have got experience, and they've got experience in the area. You know, they understand the conditions where your club is. So it's really hard to give general advice for any of that, other than try and surround yourself with good, competent tradesmen. That would be my suggestion.
We're bound by what the council allows us to use because we're down by a creek, and the stuff we use is DSMA.
Yep.
And it seems to do a pretty fair job. And the council are the ones that spray it for us. But although occasionally I do spot spraying with the DSMA to just treat the weeds that pop up in our peach lawns.
Put dye colouring in with it so you know where you've been.
Yeah.
I don't put the dye in, the council can see where I've been, that's right.
Ben, do you have to do any maintenance on your lawns? You're still on mute. Can you unmute?
There we go. Is that better?
Yep.
There's little maintenance, ongoing maintenance to be done. We had the contractors come back and after 5 months, and what he has done is rolled over the surface again to just even out any bumps and that may have occurred since we had all the rain, and it has the fill has settled in. So the other thing he did was brush the lawns or the surface, and that should be the only maintenance we will have to do. It's this little machine that looks a bit like a lawnmower, but it has a brush on it instead, and you run that over the lawn to when you have flattened the fibers of the synthetic, you run that over to just lift it up again and renew it. So he suggests that we probably do that every 3 months or as need be, as we find that the lawn gets very fast because brushing it will lift the fibers.
And were you adding some sort of ground glass mixture to slow it down?
The grass mix and sand that was put in it was to hold the fibers in place without the sand. Normally the sand goes hard when it rains and dries out. So the glass was put in to make sure that didn't happen. Now, it should, in theory, have slowed it down a bit, but it is only down, it comes up 2/3 to the top, so we don't have any surface sand.
And I've got a question just asking what your underlay is.
The underlay, there's no underlay other than the surface that was in the old croquet courts, the clay surface. That was leveled, and it was thought to be quite sufficient. So that's what we stayed with.
Okay, so it's about time to finish, I'm afraid. It's always interesting, these sort of workshops where you raise all sorts of angles and you might need to go and research more or talk to other people and do what Rob suggested about building a team. There's some interesting information on the Oxford site, and I think Gordon's been adding some stuff about links to it on the side panel under the chat. But if you just type Oxford Croquet, you'll find it anyway. I'm not aware of any similar repository for Australian greenkeeping material, but maybe we need to set it up under the Academy, which Greg Beery's promoting, because it's meant to actually create channels of communication for, you know, all sorts of things related to croquet, not just playing, but greenkeeping, refereeing, you know, all that sort of stream. Is there any final comments from everyone? Anyone?
Yes, I'd like to
One
thank
comment about grants, just so you're aware. We applied for many grants, but the way we were successful was in the Stronger Country Communities Fund. So that may be an avenue for others looking for funds.
Was that you, Kevin?
Yeah, well, I just want to thank you for organising this. It's been very informative.
It's like Croquet New South Wales initiative. Good to see things like this happening. Because trying to get us all in the same room would never happen.
That's right.
Okay, thank you all for listening in, and especially the presenters for providing very interesting input. And feel free to raise any further questions afterwards, and we'll direct them to...
Oh, sorry. And the resources will be up on the Croquet New South Wales website in the next week or two under resources workshops. We've got the resources from the last 2 workshops are up there too, including the video from the tournaments one. So thanks everybody for coming along, and any suggestions for future workshops, contact me at the secretary at Croquet New South Wales address. That would be fabulous.
See you next week again, Samia.
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, okay. Thanks
Peter.
very much, everyone.
Bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Thanks from Coogee.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good.
Let's go.
Thank you.
Please meeting.
We'll get out of this.